I'm Sara Böhm, and I'm here with Boulder Bookstore, chatting up my book, Shadows of Elysian. When a new executive starts bringing in centuries-old conflicts to the boardroom, Charlene's world of corporate issues takes a turn, blurring her reality and what she thought was myth. I felt like I was craving something within this particular genre, a balance of that supernatural and realism that wasn't exactly 50-50. I wanted to explore the human elements within a monstrous being and the monstrous elements that exist within human nature and how a world would coexist within that. I think lovers of the romance fantasy genre will appreciate what this book has to offer. You have action, drama, comedic moments. You have a situation where our morally gray character falls first, corporate romance, little bit of enemies to lovers sprinkled in. Anyone who appreciates horror elements, messages of self-worth and earned respect and intimacy, it checks all the boxes for the ones looking for something more than just steam, even if it does have that in there. There's so much heart within the characters. There's open door scenes, so don't be surprised, and I warned you. I'm a pantser, which means that I don't outline, so what doesn't my writing process look like? It was a daily practice that just kept me grounded and offered some form of escapism. I'm a mom, a business owner, and work many hours, but writing was something I could do for myself. Draft 1 is word vomit. Draft 2 is condensing all of said word vomit. Draft 3 is just refining, adding scenes, removing scenes, and then draft 4 through 7 or more is a labor of love and getting to points quicker. I'm so excited to already have a publication date of May 4th, 2027 for the next book. So readers, they don't have to wait long for the next installment. I will say it is a little bit darker than the first one. I am finishing Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and I like how she structures her books, how it's, I feel like a little run-on-y, but I feel like that translates to how thoughts just go off on tangents, and so I appreciated just like the slight difference. I feel like there's so many books that the prose is very similar to each other now, and so I appreciated that difference. Another book that I started reading that I don't hate, I'm digging it right now, is Death Prefers Blondes by Caleb Roehrig, which is a little bit of a cross between Ocean's 11 and RuPaul's Drag Race, which they do go well together. I don't think I mentioned this so far, but it is a vampire romance story. It's inspired by historical events and movies that evoked some form of melancholy interspersed with a psychological thriller. Big inspiration was Werner Herzog's 1979 film Nosferatu. That is my favorite Nosferatu. I felt moved when Hutter traveled to Count Orlok's home, how the music swells and breathes life into the region that puts you into this different world affected by Count Orlok himself. And the end is just so deliciously dark. For me, that puts me into an odd headspace for a week after I finish watching it. And I hope to do the same to my readers. Really mess with them after they read the last word. Another inspiration was Donnie Darko and the feelings of existential suspense. Like the ending of Nosferatu, the themes really stuck with me. I would say those two films in historical context, and that's where this book happily lives. This is more like internal thought than anything else, but I just thought it would, for that little snippet that I'm allowed, that I could show a little bit more of the darker tone. It's not the darkest scene, I think, from the whole book, but you know, gives you a taste, I guess. Vlad had centuries to reflect on past impulsivities, both mortal and immortal. There were many, but none had yet seen judgment. No heavenly messenger dared to reach into shadows as dark as his. Religious faith had long since abandoned him. Or perhaps it was he who abandoned it, having grown well acquainted with the devil. After all, who else but the devil could forge someone like him? If Vlad's blessing was to defy death, evading the hell that surely awaited him, then his curse was to be a slave to a hunger that was never satiated. He played the part of a businessman well enough. Charming, schmoozing, seducing. But underneath it all was a craving that consumed him every minute of every day. He had philosophies, quiet tenets reserved for himself. First, as a being beyond humanity, the rules of man weren't exactly beneath him, but they certainly weren't made for him. And second, if the laws of man were unfit, then his nature demanded some other code. Like a tiger in the jungle, an apex predator doesn't starve itself for fear of offending sensibilities. The beast simply does what it must. So did he. He had tried many times to resist the hunger, to starve himself, but false restraint only made him a creature of pure impulse. In the end, denying his nature was the greater of two evils, controlling it the lesser. Unlike a tiger who ate whatever the day provided, Vlad had the sentient mind to be selective. With hundreds of years of practice, it was a choice he made long ago and had continued to make throughout his existence. Tonight he found himself on the outskirts of Boston University, the campus reeking with youthful ambition. Just down the street, bars and shops were full of students, freed from parental constraints, primed for mistakes, big and small. The air was dense, a concoction of weed and cigarettes. Across the street from the sports bar, Vlad observed, already hunting. The bar's neon sign cast a red glow over young women who strutted in or stumbled out. Most of the men wouldn't cause trouble in public. But there was always at least one exception. He crossed the street. Once inside, the noise hit like a wave. TVs blaring, music playing, voices shouting over both. He sat on a bar stool, scanning the crowd. So many youngsters. Undoubtedly a few with fake identifications were rejoicing in a semester nearly complete. Perfect. Much easier to spot nefarious intent. There was a rare bloke that had failed the term paper, drinking himself into oblivion. Vlad spotted several. Their shoulders slouched, some resting their heads on their hands. They weren't who he was seeking. The bartender, a young woman, approached. He waved her off. "You never saw me." Her gaze drifted, forgetting him instantly. Compelling, was useful, though rarely used. It would have made his life far easier. Sorry, that was my bad. Getting a container would have been done the very same day he started at Elysian. But it was too easy. Getting under Charlene's skin was far more entertaining. Where was the thrill in getting his way right at the start? He got his container eventually. Better to refine his own skills than settle upon a lazy alternative. He wore jeans and a black sweater, avoiding the attention a suit would bring. Some of the college girls glanced his way, their minds skimming fantasies he could only guess but would never indulge. He had learned the dangers of involvement with the young. Their hopes were fragile, his indifference too sheer. Vlad's eyes were then drawn to a man, college-aged boy really, who stood hunched at the bar, his presence a dark stain in a sea of vivacity. Fidgeting, his eyes darted every which way. Vlad stilled himself while he monitored the man watching the group of women to his right. The woman closest to him was unaware, laughing with her friends. Her drink out of her periphery. Vlad watched the man make the same observation, eyes flitting from the woman, her figure, then back to her drink. The man took his opportunity, all bartenders too busy to detect foul play. Merely a boy he was, beard stubble in patches. Vlad didn't care. The news tomorrow would report the death of a promising young man. Despite the ground-up Rohypnol they'd find in his pocket. The same drug that Vlad watched trickle into the woman's martini glass. In a heartbeat, Vlad was up, purposely bumping into the young man, the drink spilling across his lap. The woman turned. Vlad clumsily tried to place the drink back onto the counter. "Sorry, love," Vlad said, feigning embarrassment. The man wiped at his pants with a grumble, then hastily made for the exit. Vlad let him go, watching him push through the door and disappear. Vlad would let him get a head start that he didn't know he was being given. Turning to the girl, Vlad placed cash on the bar. 15 for your trouble. He leaned down to whisper in her ear. Little advice, keep your drink where you can see it. He pulled away to see fear in her eyes, seeming to understand that he saw what she hadn't. Hopefully, she'd remember it for the rest of her life. Walk each other home, ladies, he called to the group as he left the bar. The hunt was set. All he had to do was follow the hint of spilled martini and overused Old Spice. He'd later detect the heart rate that was about to spike. For Vlad was about to shadow his every movement, waiting in the darkness until the opportune moment. The moment where fear was at its pinnacle. The moment where all hope gave way to accepted fate. The moment when a predator became prey. Bam! All right, that's pretty much it. I don't know how to finish this. Thanks for having me. And I hope that people like it. Go to Boulder Bookstore.